Futurama Simpsons Crossover Crisis 2, Issue 1. It doesn't make sense that Scruffy and Willy would fight each other when they were getting along last time. At least show what their argument was about. Morbo assumes the Simpsons characters are invading a city for no reason, when they're behaving just fine. I guess he means that metaphorically, because there's a whole bunch of them. And Kent Brockman, who's somehow acting like he's allowed to do reporting in this world when Morbo's already doing that, assumes that the entire town of Springfield is suffering from mass hallucination, even though that makes no sense. They would have made physical contact with the people there and found out they were real. And obviously one of the Simpsons characters would have asked another one if he's seeing exactly what he's seeing and be told yes. Somehow the same girls who bully Lisa are perfectly fine with letting the girl with 3 ears play jump rope with them. Maybe they only hate her for her personality. Leela asks Fry and Bender why they're watching TV at a time like this, and Professor Frink smacks through the window with his jetpack and somehow isn't killed or injured from shards of glass flying into him. Leela shows him compassion, asking if he's okay, and he wants to warn people. It turns out the Future's police are trying to arrest the Simpson characters. Since they're from another universe, they are illegal immigrants, so they did break the law, but they didn't choose to get sent here. So it's still annoying to see this. And Bender isn't taking this seriously and just talks as if he's still watching TV. Farnsworth shows up and tells the crew to take flashback pills so that they'd see his boring story as he tells it. He was at a scientist meeting where they were applying for city funding. Wernstrom is a real idiot for thinking that people would want his tickle machine, when nobody likes to be tickled. Well, I guess it could be used as a more merciful form of torture. Hilariously, Fry sees double flashbacks from eating 2 pills at once. The subjects laugh themselves to death, but that actually would be considered useful then as a weapon or torture device. But even then, wars prefer long-distance weapons, and wouldn't all the wars in the future be fought with robots and drones anyways? Farnsworth falls over and trips because of Wernstrom's spiteful, gross prank. There's no reason you'd think a self-eating watermelon would be useful. How would Fry's comic be stuck to his slipper? He says they could harness the power of the fictional world by gently opening the barrier by using these random things he just found in front of him. So he conveniently gets all of the characters out of the comic. Why does it have to be random things instead of him working hard on an invention that he was working on for quite some time? I naturally assumed that the reason the story started out the way it did was that it was continuing off of the end of the previous Simpsons crossover comic, where the two worlds had merged. Farnsworth says he's trying to get funding by impressing the government, tells the mayor that as fictional characters brought to life, the Simpsons characters have no rights, so they'll make great slave labor to round up. But obviously people would campaign for their rights anyways, and he'd still get in trouble for this later. Wouldn't he know that? They're still technically illegal immigrants, so wouldn't the government just punish them? It's pragmatic of them to even consider doing this instead. Seymour's mother lashes out at him by blaming him for their kidnapping for no reason. Fry wanted to go into his living room and say the Simpsons are on. Lisa hugs Leela, who says it's great to see them again. They ran to the Planet Express base for safety. And Homer's just glad the Terran reality wasn't his fault, but he'd still stay mad at Farnsworth. Bender will be told that there is a reward for snitching on the Simpsons characters. Somehow, the police are fooled by a blatant lie that Fry has life-size Simpsons action figures. Wouldn't they see them breathing? Lisa thanks them for the save, and Leela wants to save them again. But Hermes is a jerk and doesn't care, and says Leela has a book delivery to make to the ice planet. Bart gets excited about going with them, and Leela says it's up to his mom, who says only if they all wear jackets. This is way more enjoyable because now they get to join in on the fun sci-fi stuff. Marge thinks the view of Earth is beautiful, and Homer's not impressed because he's already been to space, and reminds Marge that she's terrified of flying, so she panics. We see the evil Simpsons Don get punished for his crimes by being forced to vacuum for the Don bot, while his crony has to polish the Clamps robot. Moe doesn't know how to make the fancy future drinks at the bar. I love that the Simpsons characters are actually getting hired for jobs they did earlier. It makes sense because they're being hired for the stuff they're qualified to do, instead of being incompetent and annoying me. He responds to a prank call, not knowing what he's saying because he's speaking in binary language. And the robots laugh. Wouldn't it be more likely that he'd not remember exactly what he was told to repeat? Because he was just told a bunch of zeros and ones? So wouldn't it make more sense that he would say stuff that the robots wouldn't understand? And Bender laughs too. Mom recklessly puts a slave in charge of managing the Western Division of Mom Corp, somehow expecting Mr. Burns to know how to do that with no experience, and not sabotage her. He only knows how to run nuclear power plants. It's nice that he kisses her hand and she appreciates it as he says she's stunning. He says she could slip into something more comfortable. And Mr. Burns slaps her sons, telling them they're lucky he doesn't have any hounds to release. I don't remember him slapping his employees regularly, but somehow he's written to do this to look like he's got something more in common with her. But he just came into the room. How did he know he'd get away with doing that? He should have just been told to do it. Apu's working in a supermarket, happily giving people futuristic stuff like chocolate sandworm milk and pork gum for denture-wares. He's told he's amazing, but he's sad because with bulletproof glass to protect him, where's the thrill of the job? Even in modern times, everyone working as a cashier at Walmart stands behind bulletproof glass, so the Quickie Mart is behind in the times. Homer annoys Leela, asking if they're there yet, and she tells Fry to watch TV with him, which teaches them for the first time that they have TV on the ship. I guess it was just installed. They see a robot named Malfunctioning Eddie advertising cars, and Gil's working for him advertising a spaceship. Then he says he's been driving a robot car all week long. A human asks if that's the fellow who test drove her, and she says that she loves him despite him being a human. And Eddie blows up, and Gil immediately ends up married to the Crushinator. Sure was inconvenient that the robot was right there to marry them. It's not like Gil's a robot. How could he actually... The temperature of the ice planet is absolute zero, only in shade. Because magic. And somehow Bart was dumb enough to lick Bender in the cold. But he's fine in the next panel somehow. That's futuristic technology off screen for you. Then they scream and it cuts to them hanging from an icicle-covered ceiling in a Yeti cave as the Yeti's holding a cookbook for delivering people specifically. Somehow. Bender extends his arm to get a stick for Bart, who throws the stick to make the Yeti chase after it to his death. It was nice that Bart was useful, but anybody who was in his position could have done that. In fact, couldn't Bender have thrown it? Bart's told they're proud of him, and we cut to them all in danger again, with some of them trapped in goo, and Marge operating a mecha to fight a monster that's got someone else. Then they have a baby alien sign for something. So naturally, the Simpsons characters are exhausted after their first day working for Planet Express. That was just brushed aside, and mostly kept off screen. And Lisa lampshades that they're working for nothing, and so they are still slaves. Fry says that at least they're not being whipped. So Hermes says they're working for them in exchange for not being sold into slavery, but that happened to them anyways. And meanwhile, we see a whole bunch of the unlikable Simpsons civilians being told by Zap that they're cannon fodder because they don't have the skills to make it as Earth slaves. When asked what dupe is, he says Kif will answer that boring question, while he'll try to beat his own paddleball record, trying to be a little entertaining. Kif says dupe is the Democratic Order of Planets whose prime directive is to not hurt living creatures. I thought they were the army, which does that by definition. Then Zap bursts out of his shirt because he grew after his last visit to a buffet galaxy. Why would it be an entire galaxy? Smithers says he may be able to help because he's had some experience with the garment and ends up becoming Chief Petty Laundry Officer with his advice. It makes sense that he'd help out to get a better job than cannon fodder. Kif's upset because somehow now Smithers outranks him. Why was Smithers considered not having the skills enough to be anything but cannon fodder when he had a job as a personal assistant? Why couldn't he just be that instead of being sent to the army? Wouldn't he be working for Mr. Burns? Lisa's petting Nibbler and says he reminds her of her pet cat, somehow, and Lily thinks it's smart to tell her that he does have some cat in him, because she can't turn her back on him at the pet store for a second. She'd have gotten into legal trouble for that. Somehow Zoidberg wants to eat some pitchers of food. And Bart goes to the lab and is told that's where he keeps the universe as he looks into a box. A knob falls off because of him, and nothing can shut off now. So he's told to keep the scissors away from the books. Bender's told they're in danger from the literary reality-tearing machine. So he throws it through a window and says he tossed it somewhere there's never any people, the library. And somehow he thinks no one goes to a place where there's every book ever written. The machine let loose every fictional character from every book ever written. There won't be enough room in the library to hold to that many people. So what I think would really happen would be that there'd immediately be so many characters summoned from all those books that they'd all die from being crushed together and teleported inside of other characters. Maybe the device can detect how many people the room can fit at a time, to prevent that. Farnsworth says the world's in great danger now, and Bender says they should get so drunk that they won't care about the danger, as the fictional characters walk around outside. Only the ones with magical powers or the ability to make anything with technology would be dangerous. The rest would just be used as more slave labor, which is bad for the employment rate, because most employers would hire a fictional character for free instead of someone else if they could. While there were a lot of plot holes, this was a pretty interesting story. We finally got to see what would happen if the Simpsons characters were all sent to Futurama. And depressingly, it results in them all being enslaved because fictional characters don't have rights. You'd think they would just be held in prison for being illegal immigrants. So I guess it's convenient for them that they don't have to put up with prison, and immediately they're given a different punishment because Farnsworth suggested it. It doesn't even make sense that they got to that world in the first place. The story's all a series of gags between time skips showing how the various characters find a new place in the world based on what they used to do before.